The border between the United States and Canada stretches over 5,500 miles, the longest undefended border in the world. But while the line on the map stays the same, everything else is quietly changing. Local accents blend, stores stock the same brands, radios play the same songs, school buses pass signs in 2 languages. In some places, it's not just influence from the north, it's a slow, quiet merging. A blending so deep that some states are just one step away from becoming Canadian. Today, we're counting down 10 US states that are dangerously close to crossing that line, where neighbor feels more like partner and sometimes dependent. Number 10, Montana, the pipeline state, on the edge. Montana, vast skies, rugged landscapes, a state shaped by strength and resilience, but quietly reliant on Canada more than most realize. Nearly all of Montana's imported fuel comes from across the northern border. 4 of its oil refineries depend almost entirely on Canadian crude. Cut that flow, and the impact would be immediate and severe. Montana's economy isn't just fueled by oil. Trade, tourism, agriculture, all lean northward, shaped by cross-border ties as strong as the Rockies themselves. When 93% of a state's imports come from just 2 countries, and one is Canada, what looks like friendship is actually dependency. If Canada changes trade routes or policy doors close, Montana's economy could be left scrambling. Could this be the first US state on Canadian economic life support? The answer may be closer than you think. Number 9, Maine, America's quiet economic tightrope. Maine looks like a postcard. Rocky coastlines, lobster boats cutting through morning fog. But underneath lies economic tension few see. Over 70% of Maine's imports come from Canada and Mexico, with Canada taking the majority share. Energy, manufacturing, seafood all depend on Canadian trade. Now, imagine a tariff hike, a policy shift, a border slowdown. Maine's economy wouldn't just falter, it could seize up. At a shrinking population and limited industrial diversity, small towns would feel the pain first, their schools, jobs, and tourism at risk. Maine is a state where one foreign policy decision could trigger a quiet economic storm, and it's coming soon if cross-border ties unravel. Number 8, Michigan, America's automotive lifeline. Michigan, the heart of American manufacturing, once fueled by factories and dreams rolling on 4 wheels. Today, its heartbeat pulses north. Through Detroit's Ambassador Bridge, Michigan imports over $50 billion, 0 cents worth, of Canadian goods yearly. Vehicles, machinery, energy. It exports over $27 billion, 0 cents back. Some car parts cross the border 6 or 7 times before reaching showrooms. When the 2022 trucker protests halted traffic on the Ambassador Bridge, assembly lines went silent in hours, costing $400 million, 0 cents a day. This bridge alone handles 30% of all US-Canada trade. Michigan can't afford even a blink. Beyond manufacturing, Michigan leans on Canada for energy, tourism, and agriculture. Their economies are shared, their fate intertwined. Has the line already blurred? When your economy dances to another nation's policies, independence is no longer guaranteed. Number 7, Vermont, the maple syrup state at risk. Vermont evokes peace, artisanal farms, maple syrup, charming towns. But its economic reality is complex. Over 75% of Vermont's international exports go north. Machinery, electronics, dairy. The flow isn't one way. Much of Vermont's electricity, especially in winter, comes from Hydro-Quebec. One disruption or political friction could leave Vermonters cold, literally. Tourism depends heavily on Canadian visitors. When borders closed during the pandemic, businesses from Burlington to Stowe suffered, some permanently. Facing an aging population, labor shortages, and rising costs, Vermont's economy still ties to older systems and northern partners. How close is Vermont to becoming a Canadian economic satellite? Closer than you think. Number 6. North Dakota, the energy state, with a Canadian lifeline. North Dakota holds energy riches envied by many. The Bakken region pumps hundreds of thousands of barrels daily, but much pipeline infrastructure is Canadian-owned. Enbridge, a Canadian giant, runs a massive pipeline across the state. If Canada shifts energy policy or tensions rise, flows can and have been disrupted. Over 80% of North Dakota's exports go to Canada. Crops, machinery, fuel. Changes in Canadian demand ripple through Fargo, Williston, and Bismarck. Rural hospitals, schools, and local governments depend on tax revenues tied to Canadian demand. Population growth is stagnant, young workers are leaving, and without diversity, some communities are one downturn away from collapse. Sovereignty on paper doesn't always mean control in practice, and North Dakota is proof. Number 5. Minnesota, a quiet dependency. Minnesota's snowy winters and lakes hide a quiet dependency. Over $10 billion, 0 cents, in goods flow annually between Minnesota and Canada, its largest international trading partner. Iron ore, electronics, agriculture all cross back and forth. Disruptions stall entire sectors. Many manufacturers rely on Canadian parts, energy, and labor through seasonal worker programs. Minnesota's energy grid leans heavily on Canadian imports, especially Hydro-Quebec power during peak seasons. Policy changes in Ottawa could raise prices or cut reliability overnight. Tourism in border towns depends heavily on Canadian visitors. Pandemic closures emptied hotels and shuttered restaurants. Facing an aging rural population and youth leaving, Minnesota's connection to Canada runs deep, deeper than most realize. Number 4. Washington, the Northwest cross-border powerhouse. Travel north of Seattle, and you might not notice where the U.S. ends and Canada begins. Washington's economy is tightly woven with Canada's. Over $12 billion, 0 cents, in goods cross the border yearly. Aerospace parts, agriculture, and more. Ports like Seattle and Tacoma rely on rail and trucking infrastructure crossing the border, where minor tensions jam entire sectors. Canadian hydroelectric power from British Columbia helps stabilize northern Washington's grid. Industries straddle both sides. Forestry, tourism, and tech giants like Microsoft and Amazon have deep ties with Vancouver. Northern towns like Bellingham often feel more Canadian than American, pricing goods in both currencies and serving Canadian shoppers. Canadian real estate investors have pushed prices higher near the border, squeezing locals. How American is a state whose economy, infrastructure, and identity rely so heavily on its neighbor? Number 3. New York, the Empire State's northern thread. New York, with its skyscrapers and Wall Street, symbolizes American might. Yet Canada is New York's largest trading partner, accounting for over $30 billion, 0 cents, annually. Goods flow through corridors like the Peace Bridge and Thousand Islands. Dairy, pharmaceuticals, apples, vehicles. A slowdown from tariffs, supply chain issues, or diplomacy would have widespread impact. Upstate cities like Buffalo and Rochester lean heavily on Canadian tourism, trade, and investment. Pandemic border closures threaten survival. Hydroelectric power from Hydro-Quebec fuels much of New York's northern grid, making it vulnerable to Canadian policy shifts. Canadian real estate investment in NYC's luxury market has driven prices up, pushing locals out. New York's economic fabric is quietly stitched to Canada's. Number 2. Idaho, the border state, blurring lines. Idaho's rugged mountains and fertile farmland conceal deep economic ties to Canada. Over $10 billion, 0 cents, in trade crosses the Idaho-Canada border yearly. Timber, mineral, Border towns like Coeur d'Alene rely heavily on Canadian visitors and investors. Pandemic travel restrictions emptied hotels and shuttered shops. Canadian companies own significant stakes in Idaho's resource industries, causing demand fluctuations to ripple rapidly. Idaho imports Canadian hydroelectric power to meet peak demand. Canadian real estate buyers have driven property prices up, challenging affordability for locals. With youth leaving for more stable opportunities, Idaho's economy beats to a Canadian rhythm. Number 1. Alaska, the last frontier at a crossroads. Alaska's glaciers and forests hide economic fragility few discuss. For decades, oil revenue funded schools, roads, and services. But shifts to renewables, declining production, and volatile oil prices have shrunk that lifeline. Cities like Anchorage and Fairbanks feel the squeeze. Tighter budgets, job cuts, struggling businesses, transportation costs skyrocket across rugged terrain. Healthcare access is limited, especially in rural areas. Young residents leave for jobs and education elsewhere, creating a dangerous brain drain. Can Alaska reinvent itself before its oil lifeline runs dry? Or will it face slow economic unraveling, masked by natural beauty? From Alaska's oil woes to Montana's shifting pipelines, these states face fragile futures, tied not only by geography, but by intertwined economies, energy grids, trade, and people. For these 10 states, sovereignty is a complex dance between independence and dependency. When policies change just across the border, ripple effects threaten livelihoods and communities. If this opened your eyes, don't keep it to yourself. Subscribe now to stay informed on the stories shaping our world. Stories many miss, but affect us all. Thanks for watching. See you in the next video.